he isn't.
Get the photograph.
Listening carefully. Listening carefully.
Right. All right. So, Rob, if you could start the meeting.
Yep. Thanks, Marika. Rob Anderson from the Southborough Economic Development Committee calling this meeting to order Monday, December 6th at 8:30 in the morning. Joining me today, I have some members. I'm going to call people out by name. If you could just say you're here. I do know that there are some members of the committee who will not be able to join us. So as I see them, Chris Robbins.
Here.
Michael Moorhead.
Here.
Matt Berger.
Here.
And Rob Anderson here as well. So I have called the meeting to order. Given the fact that this was going to be an in-person meeting, and as a result of the new Omicron variant, we are doing it remotely. We're going to move the agenda around slightly since Gary Holmes will be joining us closer to 9 o'clock. So item 2A on the agenda is going to be starting at 9 o'clock. So next up on the agenda, the next steps for the grant awarded by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, the EEA fiscal year 2022 grant. Marika, maybe you want to give us a little bit of background?
Sure. Let me just promote Julie because she just joined. And she should be, I just have to click like 3 times. Yeah. Update. So back in May of this year, we had contracted Claire Reynolds to write and apply for the EEA grant. This is the same organization that had given us the awarded us the grant for our zoning and wastewater study in downtown. So Claire received notice last week that the town was successful and that they will be awarding the town $45,000 over 2 years, so fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, which means ending June 30th, 2023. To basically work on a updated, an original study that was done in 1981 for Route 9, looking at all the sites and see basically the wastewater, I guess, opportunities. I'm not sure. I don't know the technical details, but they're going to look at wastewater solutions for Route 9. And if I'm not mistaken, I guess come up with some recommendations on what is possible for different sites. And I'm not sure if they're also going to look at ways to tie into other systems. But I think, yeah, it's crucial to understand what Southborough's options are. I think that's it. Claire, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
So the thing is that there was a study that was done, as Marika said, in 1981 by SEA Consultants. And though 1981 was, 40 years ago, the study information does not go stale, so to speak, which I had checked with Paul Pazinski. What it does is it takes a look at essentially all the soil structure and everything, which is really very important. So here's the deal. The money has to be spent. It's separated in 2 separate components. I think it's $12,000 that has to be spent by the end of June of 22, and then the balance spent by June of 23. The paperwork was forwarded to Mark. I'm not sure what the status of that is, Marika. Maybe has Mark completed the sign off on the paperwork?
No, I sent it to him last week. I think I'll follow up with him this week to see what his plan is.
Right.
What I gathered from his response is that he was going to bring it up at the next Board of Selectmen meeting to, I don't know, get approvals for the grant or agree on. I'm not really understanding that part, but because I send out a press release that he wants to send out only after speaking to the Board of Selectmen at their next meeting. So I'll follow up and see what he intends to do.
Now, Claire, Marika, just one quick question. In terms of the Economic Development Committee and Claire, you and Marika, a lot of this stuff is going to be done by a consultant. So for procurement, is Mark Purple going to take that lead role in selecting the consultant to update it, or how does that happen? Do we have a role and do we need to worry about that? Or is the fact that we applied for and we got the grant the extent of our responsibilities here?
You want me to comment on that, Marika?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that's really kind of interesting. Number one, I'm not exactly sure what approval has to be gotten from the selectmen. There was no specific approval that was required the last time around for the downtown grant. Mark also had, well, I contacted Mark when I was writing it back in May, and his question that he had on it was, where was the matching funds going to come from? So I actually broke it out into 3 different categories so that he could approve that. And that was all because the match at $50,000 is 12.5. So now it's just a little bit lower than that because the money is 45,000. I'm not exactly sure. And it costs, as Rob knows, and anybody else who's done grants, the state needs to approve it from their end after it is Mark signs it. And then they provide a date that is in order to proceed. In the last grant, I actually had then a separate contract after writing it to project manage it, and which I was the one who did as project manager, I did the RFPs or, requests that went out to several of the vendors to pick who we were going to use to do the feasibility study. So essentially, I took care of all of that. And then once the one was chosen, that was presented to the Board of Selectmen. But it seems a little bit, I don't know why he feels that, and maybe we'll find that out this week. He feels that the Board of Selectmen have to approve that. That's a mystery. So it all depends on how the Board of Selectmen want to handle it. I can't imagine that anybody on the Board of Selectmen has the bandwidth to deal with this. If there's some pre-work that needs to be done, that it would be much more efficient to hire somebody who is so familiar with the town, Route 9, all the systems that are there. And that's the former Board of Health director that we had. Nobody knows it any better.
So Rob, just so I have a feeling, I do expect that Mark would expect the EDC to lead this effort. I don't think he hasn't indicated to me that he's going to take over and kind of come up with a project team to move this forward. So I think it's the EDC should maybe propose, like who's going to write an RFP, who's going to, be contracted, like, or what type of people are we looking for? But yeah, that's my understanding.
No, and I would like us to have as much control as possible. I just know that sometimes for procurement at a certain monetary amount, you have to go through a couple of other steps at the municipal level. So I just didn't want to get into a situation where we weren't getting as much bang for the buck through this. But I would like us to see as much input as possible and as much latitude in selecting the consultants that actually go through and update the plan from 1981.
Correct. And Lori Esposito is very, very good on understanding all the procurement regulations. And in some cases, because of the type, and I would have to double check on all of this, but in some cases, because of the type of study that you're trying to do, you don't have to go through the procurement and the amounts because the amounts are lower.
Okay, that would be great. It'd make it a whole lot easier.
Yes.
So help me out a little bit. What specifically will this grant, what are we expecting to obtain? What are the 4 bullets of our goal for getting this grant? I mean, what's it going to do for us?
So Chris, when I wrote it, a few of the things that I had done was flip through with Paul Pazinski, the SEA study. So that was 40 years ago. And while the soil and everything is still the same, nobody's moved that around. What is different now are the different kinds of systems and possibilities that you can do. Paul has told me that the thought of tying in with other towns is probably not going to happen. Nobody wants our stuff, so to speak.
When you say tying in with sewers, tying in with water?
Right. In other words, like NECC has a deal with Framingham, but that was a deal that was made a while ago. Westboro doesn't want any of, doesn't have open arms with tying in with their systems. So what it would be is to take a look at what are the different options. Obviously, the ones, Paul knows the systems that are already there that were put in by Bob Morse for Madison Place, the ones that Billy DePietri has in there for his systems, 118, 121. He knows the type of system that's in there. So it would be to take a look at what is possible now in the 40 years that has been changed. So there's a couple things. One is the area that doesn't obviously have sewers. The other thing is, which was brought up at the meeting last time, was a possible water issue. You guys had discussed a microbrewery and that type of thing. There's some water issues that would also have to be discussed to be able to supply that, if that was something that was going to go ahead. So it's essentially to say, let's take a look at this, all the things that, Jack Bottolini has said, you can't have development with no sewers and a good infrastructure. And so the 4 bullets would be your water, your wastewater. We can think of a couple more. You get the idea.
My suspicion is it'd be similar to what Weston and Sampson gave us for the downtown. Here's what you've got, and here's what you could implement. To 2021, not to 1981.
That's wonderful, and the slug of money that we got from the state will definitely allow us the opportunity to hopefully lead to some progressive steps, because and once again, this is something I hope Gary Holmes touches on when we speak with him. What is the capacity? What do our competitors have? And also, what can we be doing along the Route 9 corridor to position ourselves to fill some of those empty buildings like the CAS building, and what might be the options for those obsolete properties like the Andrea restaurant that could be demolitioned, or if the right developer comes in, rehabbed. So knowing that stuff from the infrastructure side would be a good thing. So I don't think we have any votes necessary on that, because I think we're somewhat dependent upon what the Board of Selectmen want to do for that. So moving on to try to get stuff done before 9 when Gary joins us. The approval of meeting minutes for October 18th, November 4th, and November 19th. I think those were all emailed out to people.
All but the November 19th.
All but the
Right.
November
So
19th.
October 18 and November 4th.
Yep. Okay, so have people had the opportunity to read the minutes from October 18th and November 4th?
My apologies to you guys because they were sent out. One was sent out this weekend and one was sent out early this morning. Meeting minutes, I got to get a new job. It's not my forte.
No, Claire, you're doing a good job, Claire. Don't.
Yeah, you're amazing, Claire. Just keep at it.
Yeah, hey, it's you keep working on it. Eventually it will get done, but it takes an inordinate amount of time. Zoom has made taking minutes difficult. And the reason is because you have the script and you have the recording, and therefore there's more of a reason to make sure that everything that you say is correct. So it's kind of an unblessing in disguise.
Well, Claire, I to that end, I've got a couple of questions for you, and maybe you can help me, and maybe this is something that we can do to make it easier. Are all of the meetings for the EDC recorded and saved?
Yes.
And aren't meeting minutes, they don't have to be a word for word
Yes.
writing, yeah.
Yes.
I am of the opinion that meeting minutes, and this is a personal opinion, that meeting minutes catch the sense of the meeting and
Yes.
can be summarized a whole lot shorter than some of the ones that I have seen page upon page upon page for other boards, and including this board.
You're absolutely right. And that's what Kathy Cook has told me, because I do the minutes for the advisory also.
Yep.
And it's just, you're right. So I will, going forward, thank you very much, do more of a summary type minutes.
Yeah, it's because there's a lot of discussion that happens, but to a certain extent, I happen to think they're too long, and not to digress to my own personal opinion again, all of a sudden there are people who will pick up on a specific word within those minutes and use them as a battering ram to misinterpret the sense of the meeting, where there might have been universal agreement. They might use that as a wedge to say, nope, there wasn't. And based upon these minutes and this particular word, you as a board or people in general did things incorrectly. So I think simplifying and shortening the minutes is something that, one, is beneficial to us as a committee. Two, it's to Google's definition, to the definition that I've seen everywhere online, meeting minutes catch the sense of the meeting and not word for word. So I suppose, and I'm not going to put it out to the committee to vote, but I think as the chair, I'd like to see whatever we can do to make life easier for you. So anything that you feel comfortable shortening and summarizing to the sense of the meeting would be something that, as chair, I'd like to see. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it just occurred to me is all these meetings we're having are recorded on video. So that in effect is minutes in my book.
It's 100%. So, we just had a 5-minute conversation and I like a diatribe coming out of my house. The sentence could be, the chair suggested shorter minutes. Boom. It took care of
Done.
it. And we didn't have to go into like all of those things. The sense of the meeting was minutes should be a little bit shorter. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for, to make it easier for you. And once again, when the residents go and look back at the minutes, they can kind of see what we were talking about. And if they wanted to go into the minutia, as Chris said, we do have this recorded. So Claire, please, with my digression here, making the minutes shorter, I think would be a good thing. To that, are there any other comments on the minutes from October 18th or November 4th?
Now, I just want to say that Claire, once again, has brought us another grant, and she deserves a lot of credit for, I think we're the only committee who's been so successful. And I just think at every meeting, we ought to summarize the amount of grants we've brought in and what they were used for, because our budget in the town is being challenged. And I think this is a standout hallmark statement about what you can do to help improve how we are able to do our jobs to help the town grow and prosper and save money. So please, Claire, congratulations. But let's put it in the minutes, what we've done before and what we're doing now. This is great news.
Yeah, yes, most definitely. And I think that particular comment we can associate with the previous agenda item, since we did get through that. But I think a $45,000 grant from the state is a significant tool that we have that does not cost any of our residents anything. So Chris, I see your point, and I think what we'll do is, as an agenda item on EDC agendas going forward, kind of a summary of the grants that we have and the grants that we might receive in the future. So I don't see any other people looking like they have any comments on the draft minutes that were sent out to people. If I could have a motion to approve the minutes from October 18th and November 4th.
Sorry, I just did notice that in the November 4th meeting, there were just a couple of notes that Claire hadn't read. So I just wanted to make sure that she was able to answer those questions that she had before these are submitted.
Okay, yep.
One being just what time the meeting was called to order. Is that discernible from the video?
No, it's not on the video. And I think that what I was going to do is, I was doing this yesterday and I didn't want to call Marek on Sunday to ask her what time the meeting started. So that was the first one. And then the second one that I had was, my apologies, because I should have those. Right.
I think you were wondering whether we took a vote on assigning the open meeting law complaints to
Yes.
town council. I don't,
or whether
my reflection is I don't think we did, because I think the Board of Selectmen did that, right? I think we discussed that there was a complaint out there, but I think it wasn't our.
See, what happened was the recording started a little late. So it actually started on B, 2B. And so there was never anything on the recording. I was not at that meeting. I was down in Florida. And but I listened to the whole recording to do the minutes. And I didn't know, it could have been that you guys just decide, you guys just said, let's just assign that off to town council, and it didn't even require a vote.
And
And I
Claire,
don't know,
let me
maybe
just double check
somebody-
that, because I thought we did vote on it, but
I could be wrong.
I'll double check that. I'll get that to you because I have it in a letter somewhere.
So what you might want to do with corrections noted or something in the motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have that we send the OML complaint to town council. That's all I wrote down.
Yeah, I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember if we took a vote or not. So maybe I'll split the motion. Do I have a motion to approve the October 18th minutes for the EDC?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Chris,
Yes,
Michael.
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Rob, yes. The minutes for October 18th are passed unanimously. So I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the EDC minutes for November 4th with the corrections to the called meeting to order time and the OML vote based upon Marika's research. And with those two changes, the rest of the minutes are correct. I'm assuming I can do that.
If we're still wondering about the time starting, I have 7:21 as the start time for November 4th.
Nice work, Mike.
Hey, Mike, there might be a job opening here on minutes.
What's that?
Nope.
Okay, so you, Mike, you said 7:21 or 31?
7:21.
21, okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
And so I guess the Marika will be able to answer the second question about assigning OML complaint to town council, whether or not we took a vote. So
Yeah,
when
and then
she's
if
able
not,
to,
I'll use what Mike said that he has in his notes.
yeah. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes with the updates from the research when they come in?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna go as I see them. Chris,
yes,
Yeah.
Michael,
Yes. Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Rob, yes. So minutes approved with the corrections that will be coming from Marika. So I did notice that we have two people in the attendee list, Gary Holmes and Sam Stivers. Marika, could we pull Sam over as well? It's a small enough group right now, and as a representative from the Board of Selectmen, I think I'd like to have Sam in to begin for at least this conversation, if possible.
Yeah, I'm moving him over. And then maybe I can start. Welcome, Mr. Holmes. My name is Marijke Moensef. I'm the EDC coordinator. I've been emailing you. On behalf of the EDC, thank you for attending our meeting and willing to speak to us about the commercial real estate situation. For the committee, Mr. Gary Holmes is president of RW Holmes Realty. They have decades of experience in the greater Boston area with commercial real estate. And more specifically, I think they are very active in Southborough, and hopefully can give us some insight on the challenges and opportunities that we face. Rob Anderson is chair of the EDC, and maybe I'll give the word to you, Rob. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Marika, thank you, Gary. Pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think the EDC wants to put us in a position, as strong a position as possible, to compete with some of the other communities outside of Boston. We do have some opportunities. We also have some challenges. So as someone who knows commercial real estate and the Route 9 corridor in particular, hoping you can talk about what you see from your perspective, what Southborough might want to focus on in terms of business recruitment, what might be out there, and then maybe some of those obstacles that you see not only here in Southborough, but regionally, that stop some companies from thinking about one community versus another. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you for a little bit of a regional overview.
Sure. And for starters, Rob, I haven't seen you for a while. So, geez, I didn't know you were the chair of the group. Very nice of you to step up. And boy, I haven't seen Sam Stivers for ages. So, neighbor and bought my original house in Southborough. But very, very timely. We've been in meetings with the folks from Natick. We're on a panel recently for Framingham, and everyone's trying to figure out what to do with the office market. Right or wrong, my feeling is the office is not going away. However, most companies are going to basically reduce their footprint. And I think between 25 to 30% of the office space across the country is going to need to be repurposed. But keep in mind, probably 10 to 15% of that needed to be repurposed pre-COVID anyway. I would say what I find concerning for Southborough is highest vacancy that I've ever seen, and I'm talking about Route 9 in terms of the office market. You have about 900,000 square feet, and basically right now our numbers are at 35.6%, which is the highest vacancy out of any community in Greater Boston. So basically 1 in 3 buildings is empty right now. I think another challenge going forward is we saw with the amount of difficulty that the companies have had finding quality people, retention, that there was that flight to sort of the A properties out there. When the economy cools down, the B properties tend to do better. A lot of people go to more what we call the value proposition. I think the Route 9 corridor is very fortunate with the amount of space that Billy DiPietri owns. He does a great job maintaining them. He's always trying to improve the buildings. So that bodes well. But again, even Billy right now is facing an awful lot of vacancy. Then you look at 250 Turnpike, that's been vacant for ages. 225 Turnpike Road is an example of that Class B building that as the economy gets a little difficult, we typically see more lease activity. But we think the B product is really going to struggle going forward. The biggest problem we have with any of our clients is they can't get people to go back to work. So the companies right now that we are working with, want that A space, they want the amenities, they want the new HVA system for better ventilation, they want patios, they want outdoor space. So a big change going forward. The other thing that is huge that's not going away is the life science sector. And so much of our activity was in the Lexington, Waltham area as companies from Cambridge pushed down Route 2. Right now, that has really pushed out to the suburbs, and it is really the savior for a lot of the office space out there. Just in the suburbs alone right now, there's over 7 million square feet of space, of office space that's being converted over to lab. So one of my concerns for Southborough right now, you look at Natick and some of the parks, behind Dick's Sporting Goods, there's Abbey Labs, which is an incubator for labs. Those companies are growing. 2 weeks ago at 990 Crossing, in where Staples is, you have the buildings in there owned by National Development. They sold about 2 weeks ago for 93 million. That is basically an investor that's converting those buildings to life science. And we're doing a lot of deals in Marlborough right now that again are lab related. And it's no surprise to any of you. And I've had the discussions from living in Southborough and talking to people over, my 25 plus years. We've always talked about, what do we need? We need SOAR down Route 9. So what do lab companies want? They want SOAR. What does Southborough not have? SOAR. So you're missing out right now, because we're seeing a number of companies in Natick, Framingham that are growing lab companies that are just jumping right over and popping out to 495, more to Marlborough. Westboro is starting to see a little bit of the benefit of that. So clearly there's some challenges right now that more than ever are keeping sort of Southborough out of what I call the game. So everyone right now is just scrambling to try to accommodate this tremendous lab growth that's out there. And again, I don't see this as something that is COVID driven. There are just so many spinoffs, so much venture capital money that's gone into these businesses that a lot of them are going to succeed. They're going to get FDA approval. And then once they're in your community and their product all of a sudden takes off, now in addition to what was lab space, now you need a lot of office space, because you've got to sell the product. You're building up finance. You're doing so many different things to support that product. So I think that is, I guess my 5-minute overview, and hope it's somewhat helpful, and happy to answer any questions.
Gary, thank you. Now, one thing that I always think about, and I've been told I've been wrong lots of times, so if I am wrong, please let me know. But if, for example, the lab were to set up in Marlborough or Westboro, where they have the sewer system, most of those businesses, as they continue to grow, want to have the office space co-located with the lab for efficiency standpoint. So you wouldn't necessarily see a growing life science company in Westboro choose to put some of their office space in our empty offices, correct?
You're correct. They're going to try to be within walking distance as much as possible.
Yeah. So it strikes me that if we do want to capture some of that particular industry sector, that the Route 9 corridor and sewer is an important initiative that from an EDC we can think about.
Just absolutely paramount.
Okay. Julie, I know she came off mute.
Yes, thank you so much, Gary, for being here. And you know, we've talked about sewer on Route 9 for a long time, but that's one of the stronger arguments that I've heard for it that I think will resonate with a lot of people in the town. And Chris always talks about our diverse business sectors and also the talent that we have here in Southborough, just with our population, and all of that converges on sort of this life science piece of it. And it makes perfect sense for us to try to support and encourage those types of businesses in our community. And it makes most sense to have them on Route 9. Another thing that we've talked about a lot on our committee, and that the town is a priority for the town as well. On our committee, we talk a lot about mixed use development and how why that's been successful and why that's sort of the what's being promoted in all sectors of economic development. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of that too, especially when we're talking about potentially repurposing some existing buildings. We are dealing, as many communities are, with housing problems. We need to up our housing stock, and particularly diversify our housing stock, including having more low-income housing available. And I think also, especially if we're looking at supporting these life science businesses, low-income housing aside, we want to be able to have different housing options, because not all the talent that we're trying to attract, or that our businesses are trying to attract, necessarily want a 4-bedroom $1 million colonial. So I'd love, but also that also factors in with the amenities that you said everyone businesses are looking for as they try to attract their people back to the office. And that's something that we've also noted Southborough is a little bit short on sometimes with amenities. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of those issues.
Well, I don't know that I'm directly following your question, but quite simply, the mixed use is the wave of the future. It's basically been in place. You can drive through. Probably most successful, as Rob knows, is Burlington's done a phenomenal job with it. And that whole live, work, play concept is forever going to be a winner. Clearly, if the town has the opportunity to identify some sites where you can scale of any size, then that's huge. But on that note, outside of just the mixed use, and to your point, I think so many of the communities out there just see apartments, and boy, that brings in, all sorts of impact on our resources and the school system. I'm surprised that none of the communities have really looked at the corporate housing. I mean, you could take a 225 Turnpike Road that, unfortunately our sign has been out in front, and we actually like it when our signs go down. That means someone moved in. But it's just a nondescript B building, but because of where the rents are in Southborough, the owner can't go in and reskin it and put a bunch of money in to create an A building. So you're kind of in limbo. But what do you do with a property like that? It has awful lot of land. It's more parking that's needed. It's just you drive by and the parking lot goes on forever. I think that's the challenge for Southborough, is what do you want? And more importantly, then where would you put that type of use? But I for one, think that the companies in the area would step up for any real good quality, high-end, living for their employees. And you have to compete. We're still seeing a lot of these younger talent that's still living in Boston, that's doing the reverse commute. And it's a big challenge. I was blown away years ago. I was selling, Boston Scientific's world headquarters on Route 9 in Natick, and understanding the extents that they go through, and the bus system that they have that picked up employees and brought them in, and free food, coffee, Wi-Fi, everything to try to get the talent. But it's not just an apartment building. We have a number of new apartment buildings, but basically the rooms are a little larger. So, you know, the units, they have more space. It does have the cool, you know, pool on the deck. It's funky. It's there. It would be, I'd be surprised if you wouldn't see a number of, you know, Olympus that unfortunately would have loved to have had a site in Southborough for them to go. But you're going to see companies like that if that product came up, would be sitting there taking down, you know, a block of 20 rooms or whatever for, you know, a 5-year commitment. And it's just a whole different way of looking at the housing sector. You know, the affordable, every community needs that. And Julie, when you figure that out, please let me know, because we all need it so bad. And, you know, we all sort of aren't big fans of 40B, but if it wasn't for 40B, I don't know how we would have any semblance at all of some affordable housing in the Commonwealth.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Gary. And one question that came up from your statement about 225 and the parking lot that seems to go on forever. One of the things that we just accomplished at our past town meeting was adjusting the zoning in our downtown for mixed use. Thinking about zoning along Route 9 and the parking requirements that are in our zoning right now, are they too, could we find some value in perhaps adjusting the parking requirements for some of those properties along Route 9, allowing for fewer parking spaces, more green space, further development of footprints of buildings? Is that something that some communities have done, taking a look at their parking requirements to see where things could potentially shift?
No doubt about it. A number of communities are starting to look at that. Building went up, God, probably a year and a half ago, but we did the Northeast headquarters for a company called, Exponent, that's on Route 9 in Natick, and the town gave them a lot of waivers on the parking in order for them to maximize that site. A lot of it at the time when that was actually approved was pre-COVID, but the whole idea of autonomous vehicles, a lot of people taking Uber going forward. Now you couple that with what's going to happen is these lots are going to have a lot of excess parking. I don't see any way around, as much as the employers want people back in, or the majority of the employers want people back in the office. It's unless we have a massive recession, this hybrid work is going to continue. And more importantly is the other big issue for a lot of our clients is they can't even hotel. So meaning you can't reduce your footprint and have 100 cubicles because you know you're never going to have more than 100 in there. When people do come in, they're still so nervous. They want their own cubicle or their own office. So it's artificially going to keep the square footage magnified, which in turn means that you're going to have all this parking in line for the size of the building, but you're never going to see the population in the building that would ever utilize that, exception, maybe you have a call center or something that is a little unique, but you're correct. The parking for most buildings going forward, and we're not even getting into autonomous vehicles, but most of the properties are going to be overparked.
Gary?
Chris,
how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for being with us. And well, if we could make you the CEO here of Economic Development or the Board of Selectmen, what are the 3 priorities we need to address in this town to turn Route 9 into a vibrant business community? or enhance it?
You know, I don't think I'm telling, you know, I've had conversations on and off with the town for over 25 years. And it was back then, sore on Route 9. I think now more than ever, it's a plus. And I'm still surprised after all this time that Southborough is such a gem. The number one thing is the schools are great, and Southborough continues to invest in their school systems. You know, the new fire station, everything else is there. I just can't believe in all these years that we haven't done anything with the so-called downtown Southborough. I think it would be tremendous for home values, which bring up the tax revenue. I think I scratch my head because Southborough is such an incredible place. And, you know, I'm always intrigued anyway, when I talk to someone and they're like, oh, we looked at Southborough, but we ended up going to Sudbury. And I'm like, oh my God, from Sudbury, how do you get anywhere? I just love the location of Southborough. And so I don't think I'm telling anyone anything new. It's the downtown should be, God, more vibrant. You know, it's nice, you know, having it a little bit more walkable and you know, the paths to get there. But, you know, God, a restaurant, a few more things that are down there. And that, you know, that to me, I don't think has changed over 25 years. I think we're just missing out so much. That would add so much more charm. I'm not saying build the heck out of it, but a few more places that make the town a little bit more walkable, a little bit more exciting for people that are looking at the community, that why they want to live in town. But overall, I'm kind of biased after, you know, having lived there for so long in Southborough, that you like it. You know, your kids went through the school system. It was great. You get fond memories. So, you know, I think a lot of times it takes someone as an outsider to maybe come in and point out some things that are, you know, beyond the obvious to probably myself and most of you on the panel.
So the good news on that, Gary, is that we have been focusing on the downtown, and we just passed an amendment to the zoning bylaw for downtown to hopefully encourage some small scale development. We've also been talking about walkability, connectivity, things like that. So you know, that is certainly has been one of our top priorities for the past few years, and we've made some really good progress on there. Specifically, just last month when we got the zoning bylaw passed, which was a big win for us. So we absolutely hear you. we all live here too. So we're hoping that you know, that's sort of the foundation for having exactly as you described, not building the heck out of it, but having a restaurant or some options and some great ways to get there that bring the community together and, you know, sort of are in line with all the other great things about Southborough. So yeah, so Route 9, sort of the next thing that we're trying to focus on, because that's the other big piece that we hear about. And we're obviously concerned right now because of vacancy rates and, you know, thinking about how we can repurpose office space and things like that to make sure that we are getting both the tax benefits of having fully utilized space, and also, you know, if we're going to have to deal with Route 9 going through our town, then we might as well be fully utilizing it and making it both look as nice as possible and be as functional as possible. So that's kind of our next step.
Great.
So Gary, I have a couple of somewhat unrelated questions, but so are you aware of any examples where, I think to me the issue, I've lived here for 20 years, and I can tell you any major expenditure is like pulling teeth in this town, just in terms of the cost and what it's going to mean. And some are approved and some aren't. But something like a sewer system is abstract enough and is as sort of if you build it, they may come kind of enough that it's, I think, a pretty heavy lift to get something like that approved. Are you aware of any towns where there's been some kind of public-private partnership, or somehow a developer has somehow been you know, convinced to pay for all or part of a significant sewer upgrade such that, that's an avenue we could pursue to get everyone on board with the idea.
Yes, it would take me some time to come up, but for instance, they've been limited in Marlborough in several sections. So part of the dollars as part of the approvals has gone to offset the cost of improving. When we were selling, it's now Sanofi or however you pronounce it, but a couple of the deals that we did when we were selling properties on California Ave to Genzyme, which is right on the Southborough line, they did not have adequate sewer in there. So certainly Genzyme did pony up, but not all of the dollars, but certainly did contribute. My concern with Southborough is I don't know if we would have, the only thing I could think of is, build the Petrie's site on the 40B that's been back and forth. I mean, that's a prime example where something is large enough of scale that maybe a developer would, but I don't know that someone would go in and, for instance, I'd love to see 250 Turnpike that seems like it's been sitting empty for 7 years now. God, I'd love to see someone go in there, but if they needed sewer and that building is 58,000 or something, even if you allow them to go up a level, there's just not the magnitude where I don't know that they could contribute enough. So Matt, I think that's a great question. And I think that you could get some contributions in, certainly from the developers. But I'm not even, I'm way out of my league to guess what the hell it would cost for a sewer at this point, and what it would cost to tie in from Framingham or Westboro, and what sort of deal they may or may not cut.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, I'm just thinking, does the state have the funds to help communities?
Chris, to your question, the state has the Massworks grant program, but the Massworks grant program is not build it and they will come. What you actually have to do is demonstrate an economic development value, such as job creation or housing units. So usually what happens is a developer comes forward with a plan. The town sees that plan and says, okay, as a result of this project, we're going to go after Massworks funding. It is not enough to be able to build a wastewater treatment. You might get $3 or $4 million, which is a pretty good slug of money, but you would actually have to have a project of a certain size and scope, as well as a developer willing to contribute as well, in addition to the municipality putting in some skin in the game. So usually those Massworks projects are multiple years in the making, and I'm not sure what people's appetite is for that in Southborough. But Matt, I noticed you might have had another question.
Yeah, so I guess in thinking of the different types of real estate one could develop, and the impact on sewer, and then coupled with the impact, or coupled with what's the most hot sector of real estate now, ignoring the traffic impact. So I'll grant you that. But is there any way that you could see any of these office areas being redeveloped as what I'll call sort of last mile industrial that doesn't require even more 18-wheelers on Route 9, which is the bane of my existence over by the Barrett, by the Ken's distribution center, but something more of a Amazon truck type of last mile delivery center that doesn't require a lot of sewer because it doesn't have the same kind of footprint that an office building would, but that could be made to work, and that clearly there's demand for.
Yeah, just great question. And I'm absolutely blown away. We'll take, God, you could be in Marlborough right now, and I have a brand new 100,000 square foot first class office building, and next to it, I have a dated 100,000 square foot warehouse building of 100,000 square feet. I'm going to sell that office building for probably 6 to 7 million. And I'm going to sell that old warehouse building for 10 million. It is, and I think one of the best things that happened for Southborough, truthfully, is, we had clients that were looking at Ken's, before that was Verizon, and we're looking at it these were very large users that were looking at it, and the town did give approval. One of the clients that was behind the scenes, the developer, was one of my clients called Massworks that was taking a look at it. We ended up buying the Boston Scientific headquarters. But now you look at the building out there, and it's funny because we had meetings with the folks in Holliston, and for years they're always in, how do we get those office buildings? How do we get people? It's like, it's not going to happen. Now the industrial buildings in Holliston are worth more than the office buildings in most of these communities, and the valuations are going through the roof. So to your point, that's one thing that Southborough is missing out on. Granted, you do have the trucking, but you don't have the volume of the cars. You are missing out on some, in instances, high-paying jobs. But if Southborough had any land that they could earmark for warehouse, we don't see it going away. It's here for the next, it's not even the decade. It's going to be the darling for the next decade. But really what happened is the e-commerce was eventually going to get there. But what the pandemic did is what would have taken probably 12 to 15 years literally happened in 1 year. So, you're sitting there now, and there is right now about 7 million square feet of demand for industrial space, vying for about 2 million square feet that's out there. Just about everything is pre-leased. Rents that were $5 or $6 a foot are now $12 to $15 a square foot. Think about that. That's like rental rates in Southborough that average $20 a square foot overnight now, $60 a square foot. It's just mind-boggling. It's not going away. Those valuations, as I said, we're selling those buildings now for over $100 a foot that pre-COVID were $50. Now they're $120, $140 a foot. So those towns, when they catch up, it's going to be a big spike in the tax revenue for anyone that has a big industrial base. Meanwhile, obviously, you're going to have all the abatements coming along in the office sector, which is unfortunate.
And so, Matt, was that your last question?
Yeah, that was.
I guess mine is a tangentially related as well. And Gary, you've brought it up a couple of times. The CAS building at 250 Turnpike. It's been empty for a long time. It's not in the most opportune area. It is perhaps an older, obsolete building. What are our options, and what could the EDC be thinking about in terms of that property in particular, and maybe as a model for the rest of the Route 9 corridor, to try to get someone in there? Do we have a white elephant on our hands that's going to sit there for a long time?
Well, obviously, we've gone through about, at least in my 30 plus years in the business, we've gone through the last decade, the biggest economic boom that I've ever seen, and it's still empty after 7 years. So I start to get a little nervous at this point. If no one scooped it up by now, what the heck's going on? But, that's another one, is that you have a pretty good parking lot that's adjacent to it. You almost could flip-flop that, whether it's with some housing, whether it is high bay warehouse, and put that where the current parking is, and where the building is right now, it literally ends up being, the parking. So it's flip-flopped. But that's a great example of trying to look at what can happen. Actually, the bones in that building aren't bad. It looks like hell right now after it's been sitting empty for so long. So to walk someone through that building is pretty tough right now. But there's demand out there. I mean, I don't follow it in the office, but we're selling whatever the heck it was, the Andrea restaurant, and then the dilapidated building after that as you head up toward where Farrell Volvo was. But boy, I think that I should talk to Craig Johnson in my office, but I think that's just someone who's going to scrape them and literally put up a warehouse, but for the storage of everyone that has these beautiful cars. So there's not going to be traffic coming in and out. It's replacing the buildings, but who would have figured that, several years ago? And I haven't heard I know they had a couple obstacles, if that's still closing, but that's something that, again, the tax base won't be bad. It's not going to bring in a bunch of traffic. But I think it's great that, 250 Turnpike and some of these other sites, rather than sitting back and seeing what happens, if you as, folks on the EDC think that there's something that would be a great fit, because to your point, trying to tell someone that SOAR is potentially coming, or trying to tell someone that, oh, trust us, if you put this under agreement, we do want this use, as opposed to just being proactive and putting the zoning in place for something that there is demand and what the town wants to see there. That's huge.
No, that's a very good point. And I want to thank you for taking the time. I don't want to myself do all of the question asking, and want to make sure that we wrap everything up by 10 o'clock. Do I have other members out there with questions? We have luckily been joined by two members of the Board of Selectmen, Sam Stivers and Andrew Dennington. So I think it's good for the select board to hear that as well. Are there any other questions from the committee out there? Well, I don't see any, and I think there's a lot that I think we learned, and there's some things I think we knew, but we needed to have reinforced. Some of the initiatives that we can think about, and the fact that sewer and the exploration of sewer on Route 9 is so important. We do have a grant that we just got from Energy and Environmental Affairs to look at that. And I think with a long-term plan and potentially some zoning changes along Route 9, we have some good options for the future. So, Gary, I wanted to thank you for joining us this morning.
Sure.
Really informative. I think it's really helpful. It's good to know what some of our competing communities are doing as well. So once again, thank you so much. Oh, Chris. I see your hand
Andrew
up.
Dennington just sent us all a note and thanking Gary and saying and suggesting, we hope we can do this again, because we're not very knowledgeable in the world that you have spent your lifetime in, and bringing you and Billy DiPietri and other developers who we could bring together and help us create a game plan that'll keep us tightly focused so we don't second guess what would be the right steps. So you're being a friend, a real participant in the community. It would be a great help to catch up with you again with maybe a couple of other developers and enable us to test the waters for our next steps as a board, because we've got to move quickly on this important place that is a source of jobs and revenues for the town that we're missing out on. And your help is, as Andrew had said, is so much appreciated.
Well, great. My pleasure being here, and thank you all for what you do.
All right, but before you go, I think Sam Stivers has his hand raised.
Yeah, Rob, can I make a couple comments
Yes.
about that?
Yes, please do.
Obviously, as Gary suggested, there's pretty clear evidence that sewer is a critical element. And I don't know if folks know, I'm on the MWRA advisory board and have followed some of those conversations with the MWRA. And it appears unlikely that the MWRA has capacity to hook in to Southborough through, it would probably be through Framingham, but there are some physical constraints and some other constraints that make that particularly expensive or difficult. And that's not in any official way. I've sort of asked some informal questions about it. So it's not totally off the table, but that looks pretty unlikely. And so that sends me at least back to thinking about a local wastewater treatment facility capacity. And again, ordinarily that would be very, very difficult to afford, justify, et cetera. But given the recent federal programs that have passed, the American Rescue Plan Act has a lot of money in it for wastewater, stormwater treatment. The new infrastructure bill that is, I guess, passed now or going to be passed shortly also has a lot of money for those kind of things as well. The state has freed up some money out of the ARPA money that is a possibility for some those kind of things. And we have recently launched a committee to look at priorities for spending some of that money. How do we think about that in the context of what the town needs? So it seems to me that if we're going to do something in that direction, the federal money is the place that we can expect to find support for that. But there's a long way to go before any of that becomes reality. But I think that at least creates a possibility that we might think in that direction. And again, my personal view is that it's going to be local wastewater capacity that allows us to do that kind of development. And I strongly agree with Gary's comment that running a line down Route 9 seems to be the highest leverage approach that we can take if we've got money to do that kind of thing. So again, it's something that's clearly on the radar, nothing that I think is near term there in terms of being able to actually have something that we can go sell people who are interested in moving industrial or commercial capacity into Southborough. But if you don't start, it's never going to get done. So again, thanks, Gary. Good to see you again. And
yeah, Sam, great suggestion.
Your comments. And again, that's something that personally, at least, is continues to be important for me. I don't have any easy short-term answers, but I think that again, there are some opportunities given the federal funding support out there, but it's going to be a challenge to get that lined up. But I think, again, something that I continue to be interested in. So thanks to all for keeping this on the radar.
Excellent. Sam, a very good points, and thank you so much. I think whatever we can do, and it's the support from our elected officials and also the feedback from the private sector to tell us some of the things that should be on our radar screen, which is very useful. Gary, we have got like one or two things on the EDC's agenda, and you don't need to stick around for those. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Great, thank you.
And I'm gonna have us wrap this up by 10 o'clock. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. Do we have any unfinished business? I don't think we have any unfinished business. Do we have any new business? Don't see any new business. Do we have any public comment? Okay, I think
Chris wanted to say something.
Yes.
I want to say bravo for getting Gary on. I thought he was insightful, helpful, gave us the context of the enormous responsibility we have ahead of us. And bravo, well done, Marika, for getting a hold of Gary. And this is a great way to start. And thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I want to reiterate that point. I think Gary comes with a level of expertise based upon his years in the marketplace, plus being a Southborough resident for for many years. So I think that's a great jumping off point, and gave us some perhaps larger scale strategies as well as some smaller scale strategies as well. Like in the back of my mind, when he mentioned large parking lots, we do not need as much parking as we have out there. And I think from an environmental standpoint, stormwater, impervious surfaces, all of those things, less parking is always better. That's a personal opinion. And if we force developers and people looking at rehabbing existing areas to put more of the site under asphalt as opposed to green space or a facility, we're setting ourselves up for issues long-term from an environmental and also tax revenue standpoint. So I might, as a personal thing, partner with Marika on taking a look at our parking requirements, at least in the industrial corridor along Route 9, to see what we might be able to do there. But I'm not sure if there's any other public comment out from people. With that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Chris,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Rob is yes. So calling the meeting, we're adjourning the meeting. The agenda does have our next meeting scheduled for Friday, December 17th. Marika and I will coordinate to make sure that we have enough people to make it. So want to thank everyone. Very good meeting, and I will see everyone around.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.